Hey guys, this is Caspian with Tape, and today you join me for episode 25 of Fall of Kerbin, and mercifully, we have garnered some support from Eltamar. Yes, a nation in the north has decided to send us convoys to help us defend against the evil Cruolan Union. However, the Cruolans have become wise to this and have managed to send themselves a battle cruiser to try and intercept our convoys. Now, although we have lost the war in the CSC, we still have some ships in the north. So we've managed to marshal two light cruisers, which are Scythe-class cruisers, the USS Horatio and the USS Mercutio, and one heavy cruiser, although heavy might be a bit of an overstatement. It is a Gladius-class cruiser, the USS Claudius. Yes, I was feeling very Shakespearean while naming these. But anyway, so we have three small cruisers, thin cruisers with fairly small guns. The heavy cruiser has just 6 8-inch guns. The light cruisers have 8 6-inch guns, and they're going up against a battle cruiser. And this has 6 11-inch guns and a whole bunch of 4-inch guns, which it was just firing there. But yes, we're moving into it quite quickly with our cruisers, and we're going to try and take it down so that our supply convoys can get through the ocean and get to us, so that we can put up some serious defense, some jet fighters, and all of that kind of stuff. So yes, we're moving in now, already laying down fire at 10 kilometers. It looks like we're firing obviously far more frequently. We have very light guns which can be reloaded quite quickly. And the Gen 2 class battle cruiser slowly lining up its 11-inch guns, but if they hit, they will hit with a wallop and could well destroy our cruisers quite quickly. We obviously outnumber them with 3 to 1, but obviously these are much smaller cruisers. They're very thin, and they can be taken down far more easily than the battle cruiser. The battle cruiser has now started to move on its way to try and keep the distance high so that it has the advantage with its 11-inch guns. You can see our rounds going over the top of it there. But luckily, our cruisers being lighter are much faster, so should be able to catch the battle cruiser and take it down. This is obviously an analogue of the battle for the River Klate in real life between the Graf Spee and 3 British cruisers whose names I forget. But anyway, yes, we are catching up on it slowly. Annoyingly, to catch it, we can't turn our broadside towards it, so well, our guns are pretty limited. We take a pretty serious salvo there, but luckily the guns don't seem to be that accurate on the Gen 2 class battle cruiser. It looks like they're accurate but not precise. Each round hit a different armor panel, meaning that it can't do that much damage, can't sustain a lot of damage on our ships. And we have actually started destroying the superstructure. The bridge rips off and careens down the deck. We've also destroyed a few of its smaller secondary batteries. And yeah, we're starting to damage the hull as well, but it is a very tough hull, and our rounds are quite small, so we're gonna need to get closer so that we can put a full broadside from every ship onto it. You can see a nice salvo comes in there, ripping off another 20 mil and heating up that armor panel quite seriously. Little bits of superficial damage happening, but the main problem is obviously the 11-inch guns, or the 28-centimeter guns. And yes, it's also started to turn a little bit, it seems, to try and get its broadside fully towards us so that it can take us out. I have positioned one of my light cruisers up front to try and take all of the damage with a light cruiser, or most of the damage initially, so that my heavy cruiser and another light cruiser will be safe, and means I can get the bigger guns in closer. But you can see this is the USS Horatio is taking damage quite seriously. It is, however, on the superstructure. We're losing bits of bridge and secondary batteries because the Gen 2 seems to be firing quite high, so it's not actually putting a lot of sustained damage onto our hull. I do start turning the ship so I can try and get my broadside towards it before the ship is damaged, because there's a good chance it'll take out my engines. You can see some of the rounds coming quite far down the ship, which could indeed destroy the engines, meaning that this would be stuck. However, I turned this at a bit of a foolish moment, and as my engine is destroyed, the other cruisers are moving towards me, towards the Horatio, so I've got to start turning the other ships and trying to avoid it. So I set the Claudius to turn and hopefully avoid the light cruiser, which has actually started turning the other way now since it only has one engine. However, now the Mercutio is going to be ramming the Claudius if I'm not careful, and it's actually starting to get quite close, but I'm just trying to move. But yes, you can see now this is coming in at 20 meters per second, about to slam into the slam into the Claudius, so I'm going to put these engines in full reverse, try and stop it hitting and sinking the ship. This was a bit of an oversight. These ships were very close together and I started maneuvering them. And now I'm also going to try and just move the Claudius out of the way. It is turning, luckily, and it looks like we should just avoid this if I can stop it turning even more and hitting the Mercutio. So yeah, this was... one of the bigger risks over the battle is I'm an idiot, so I almost crashed all of my ships into each other, which wouldn't have been great. But anyway, all is safe now and we can start moving again. But it has meant that we're kind of sitting ducks, and I had to turn guard mode off on one of the ships as it was shooting over the deck of, I think, the Horatio. And you can see the Claudius takes a shot over the deck of the Horatio and actually hits the ship. Yes, a bit of friendly fire there. Not very friendly at all. The final engine goes out on the Horatio, meaning that it is stuck here about 6 kilometers away. Not ideal for its guns, but hopefully the battlecruiser will focus all of its firepower on that still, since it doesn't seem like it's going down anytime soon. Both of the ships, the battlecruiser and the USS Horatio, are superficially damaged, but still have all of their guns and have showing no signs of sinking. So, but as we get closer, we should have the advantage. The battlecruiser, of course, still running and starting to turn to make sure its broadside stays on us. It's having trouble keeping its broadside on us because we're moving very fast. But it does keep turning to make sure it's firing all of its guns to sink our little ships, to kill our little crew, to stop us getting our supply convoys, for destroying the Carolan Union. This battle actually went on for quite a long time. I think, I'm not sure how long in game time, but I think it was about 30 minutes in real time, and you can see the slugging match goes on for a while, because both of these, all of these ships are using quite big hull pieces, which are quite hard to punch through, actually. So nothing wants to go down. So we've got to get our ships closer to try and put some serious damage on the Gen 2 class battlecruiser. So you can see I'm starting to turn now, getting my ships nice and close. Now that we've caught up, I can start kind of sailing alongside it and getting my full broadside of all my, well, 2 of my ships. The other ones are mobilized, of course. But if I can get the full broadside of 2 of my ships firing, we should be able to do enough damage to sink this to the bottom of the ocean, or at least make it run to the river Klate, of course, where it will hide and then be scuppered by its Nazi crew. Although, of course, they're Carolans, pretty far from Nazis, actually. Bad people, but not Nazis. So, yeah. You can see also I'm having a problem where only a few of my shots will be hitting, because we're still 4 kilometers out, and the light cruisers putting down most of the fire. But occasionally we get some 8-inch shots coming in and putting some serious damage into one of those panels, kind of near the rear of the ship. If we can take that out, it'll start to list pretty seriously, and that'll be quite nice. And yeah, you can see we're actually, this is starting to take some serious damage, but it's still not sinking, actually. Our light cruisers are standing up very well to these 11-inch guns. I think it was tested against older ships built with the smaller panels, which meant that it could sink them quite easily, but these are, of course, quite big armor panels, so they're doing quite well. But we do finally punch through one of the Gen 2's armor panels, and it starts to list to port. Is port right? I don't know, I'll never remember. But yes, we finally punched through. It's showing signs of sinking, but it is not done yet. It has still got its guns reared, putting serious fire onto the USS Horatio. I'm sure at some point the crew will start pumping water out of the other side to try and level the ship. But right now we're getting serious damage onto it. You can see a lot of things exploding inside the ship as rounds come in. And of course it lists quite seriously. It's stopped moving now, because that would be quite dangerous. And yeah, you can see rounds flying over the Claudius, coming in towards the Horatio, and the list has gotten pretty serious now. It's right on its side, and it's starting to take fire in the deck, actually, which isn't fantastic for a ship, getting shot by 5 and 8-inch rounds in the deck. Another piece of its secondary batteries fall off and sink to the bottom of the ocean, no doubt. That looks a bit like crew quarters, so I feel a little bad about that, but you know, they're dead. There is still crew alive in this, however, operating the guns, trying to sink the USS Horatio, which has no signs of going down. It still seems to be being shot at the in the superstructure, which just isn't the way you sink a ship, but now it's having even more trouble aiming now that it's listing quite seriously. But valiantly, the crew start to try and bail out one side of the ship to try and level it out so it can be a little more accurate and maybe take down a few of these ships, but it is not looking good for the Gen 2, and it just takes hit after hit, and things explode constantly. You can just see it's just there's just explosions going off everywhere. I'm not sure what's exploding inside. Maybe ammo, maybe just other things. The final of the secondary batteries rips off, is flung into the air, will no doubt crash down. But it doesn't stop fighting back. The superstructure and secondary batteries of the Horatio start to get seriously damaged, are just falling off in just ridiculous fashion. But the list on the Gen 2 is too serious now. You can see, again, it's doing a lot of damage, but to the superstructure, nothing serious. I think it's just having too much trouble aiming now, as I said. But it will keep fighting, and then eventually it switches its focus to the Claudius, which is now stopped in the ocean and is firing at it. This is obviously the most deadly of my ships with its 8-inch guns, and it gets some pretty good hits, again, destroying mostly superstructure. The guns are accurate but not precise. They're not hitting enough in the hull to really damage it. And then my ship decides to switch sides and accidentally shoots the Claudius. We get some more hits, some more rounds coming in. They appear to rip off pretty much the rest of the superstructure, take off some secondary batteries. And I've actually not turned fully to my broadside yet, and it takes out my engine before I can move much more. But I think all 6 guns are operating now, and we should have no trouble sinking the Gen 2. But it will not go down. It is a pretty tough ship, but it is just too outnumbered, and eventually the guns are destroyed and it can no longer fight. Well, not entirely. It does, of course, have some torpedoes, which it will, of course, try and fire off at one of our cruisers. A bit of a last-ditch attempt. There goes one, and I think it fires off another, but eventually the crew do die, and the ship is dead. So unless it can destroy all of our ships with 2 torpedoes, I think we're probably good. So yes, that is the battle won. Our supply units will continue to flow through the seas from Eltamar, and we will have all of the jets and emplacements and walls we want. It'll be fantastic. My ships are pretty mad right now. They've taken some serious damage, lost some crew and all of that, and won't be giving up just yet, and we'll keep firing. Managed to kill the crew of the Gen 2, so it won't be able to even get away more torpedoes. But yes, we get some more explosions. The bow and the stern of the ship explode in spectacular fashion. And then the final thing that happens is the torpedo slams into the side of the USS Mercutio, doing little damage. Knocked off some torpedoes, almost destroyed the armor panels, but again, they're quite big. So yes, I wasn't sure if I was going to win this. That was a pretty serious ship, but I just don't think it was tested against particularly good analogs of my ships, and mine performed quite well, actually, despite taking a lot of damage. They are still floating, but not mobile. So yes, we'll be getting more supply units, and we can use them this turn. So that frees me up to do a little damage. So we're jumping over to Cathenia's Valley, where we're sending out a lone attacker to try and take out one of the heavy tanks over at the forward operating base, preparing to invade the glorious Cathenia's Valley. Now, I am pretty far from having air superiority. Last turn we did, well, in Penguin's turn, Rocket Interceptor managed to shoot down a strategic bomber. That thing is really paying off. It is a fantastic aircraft. But the fighter complement over at the forward operating base is quite serious. There's a jet fighter, and I think something like 5 TE-10 Falcons, which are pretty deadly aircraft, actually. So we're flying just one attacker over there, try and take out one of the tanks. We need to save all of our other aircraft for defending Cathenia's Valley because, you know, Penguin has too much air superiority. Oh, you can actually see the cheat menus open. That's just what you have to do when you load in these tanks, otherwise they explode due to overheating, but now that's off, so... But yes, this is of course the P4A Osprey, flying in with 1,600 pounds of bombs, as much as we possibly can, and some 30mm cannons, not that it will get to use them. And we're going to try and bomb out one of these adders, which is one of the heavy tanks. There actually is a super heavy tank down there, but I'm only carrying 500-pound bombs, so I doubt I'll be able to do a ton of damage, so I'm not even going to attempt that. You can see the fighters have taken off. 2 of them exploded on the runway. Those will be relaunched, I'm sure. And the jet fighter is moving in on us quickly. We've dropped our 500-pound bomb, but I'm very, very determined to drop this 100-pound bomb. So dive a little too low into range of the 20mm guns. And I will no doubt be shredded by that or the jet fighter, which is already on my tail. I start taking hits. It's hard to see the rounds against the snow, but you can see a few of them. But the bombs do hit and fling the tank over. Hopefully it's ripped off enough armor to do some, to call it dead. We can't really see it right there, but you can just make out that the front of the tank has been seriously damaged, and this will no doubt be useless for combat now, and we can call that a victory. However, of course, I lost the attacker because I couldn't afford a fighter escort, not that it would have helped, because it was killed by anti-aircraft guns. So yes, I do get a lot of complaints that I throw away too many aircraft. I kind of have to. People are like, you can't afford to throw away that many aircraft last turn. I was like, well, I couldn't afford not to, because I had to get the base back. It's like, geez, dude, I know I lose a lot of aircraft, but it's a war. It's difficult. Anyway, back at Cathenia's Valley, we've laid out our defenses. We, of course, have the plucky S-15X Draco, the rocket interceptor, which is becoming a bit of a hero. It shot down a strategic bomber and I believe 2 fighters over Rockdale. It's quite a plucky aircraft and is impossible to catch, and despite its short engine firing time, it can just stay in the air for ages because it gains so much energy from even very low level burning of its engine that it can just glide forever and take out anything that comes near it. It's also followed up by a jet fighter and 3 conventional fighters, which is a pretty good defense because if anything comes in, they'll be instantly hit by the rocket interceptor, which will probably take something out and then buzz off, and then before they can even think, the jet fighter will be upon them, and while they're trying to worry about that, the 3 conventional fighters will eventually get to them and start shooting at them as well. So this is a pretty good array of different speeds of aircraft, and should keep the airspace above Cathenia's Valley safe. As will the 3 20mm emplacements I've deployed. With one of my supply units I managed to rescue from Eltamar. These will stop anyone being able to strafe, because if there's 20 mils about, strafing is nearly impossible, because they'll just shred you too quickly. And yeah, so that'll be pretty helpful. There's of course 3 of these from one supply unit, and we're also deploying ourselves some more tanks. Now obviously there's a super heavy tank coming from us, something that looks a lot like a mouse, which is a pretty serious threat. So to get through super heavy armor, I've deployed myself a TD2 Cyclops. This has a 128mm gun, which will no doubt go right through that armor. This is up on the runway, so it has a nice vantage point and should be able to shoot anything that comes anywhere near it. Well, actually, if it's right near it, then it's pretty much fucked. But it can shoot things far away. That's its job. These are pretty expensive because they have heavy hulls and massive guns, but it still means I can deploy 2 medium tanks as well. So this is a pretty good investment, I think, and we need a big gun up on this ridge to stop the big tanks coming in and just destroy smaller tanks. And of course we've deployed 2 C3 Centaurs to bolster the rest of our fleet, bolster the rest of our force, because we lost one last turn. Despite shooting the wing off of the bomber, it still managed to destroy one of our C3 Cerberuses, which are these Sherman-like tanks with the high-velocity 76mm gun. Basically good for shooting everything except high, super heavy tanks. And yeah, as we zoom out, you can kind of get a view of how many units I have. There's 2 C2 Centaurs, 3 C3 Cerberuses, a TD2 Cyclops. There's an 88mm gun I forgot to look at. That's the 88mm anti-aircraft gun for shooting down bombers, and it is also fantastic for shooting tanks because it's an 88mm round. So that should fend them off pretty nicely. Of course, the 3 20mm guns, another 20mm gun on the back of a tank. It's a mobile gun, and then 2 mobile 37mm guns for things at medium range, and of course the 3 aircraft, the 3 fighters, the 1 jet fighter and the 1 rocket interceptor. So yes, I think that is quite the overwhelming force. Should certainly stop the Corolans. No tanks that they have right now could assault this ridge safely, and I think the airspace is pretty safe. We're pretty nicely dug in here, and it's really lucky that we got those supply units from Eltamar, our friendly capitalist country in the north, and managed to sink that Gen 2 class battlecruiser. Quite fun. But yes, this is the end of the episode now, and I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you liked the naval battle, my just sweeping victory, rather glorious. And I hope you'll join me for next episode. But until then, this has been episode 25 of Fall of Kerbin. I will see you next time.